All right, I'm recording this session. We're logged into Broker Mint. We're just going to walk through transactions and try to get through a buyer and seller side transaction from beginning to end. And if you need any additional support, one-on-one support with Broker Mint, just let us know. We can get together and go over it. And there are going to be some upgrades to this coming, and I'll explain those. As we're going through this, it'll help with preparation of documents and make it easier for you to change documents, especially things like the offer and purchase and sales agreement. We all know that particular offers are probably the document that we change the most and need to get new signatures, or you put an offer together, you have a buyer e-sign it, and then you verbally negotiate the offer back and forth, and you get to final terms, and you need to adjust it and resend it for signature before you send it to the seller side. That's one of the biggest ones that we're going to have an upgrade to the system on that should be live hopefully today or tomorrow. I'll let you guys know when that'll be live, but I'll explain how that works or how it's going to work. All right, so we logged into dotloop. Primarily, most of the time, anything you're going to do is going to be on the left-hand side for the most part from navigating the site. So you should always be looking kind of on the left-hand menu for your options. You have your pipeline, you have transactions. Transactions would be where you would start transactions, and you can go into transactions from either your pipeline or your transaction sheet. Either one, but depend if you're going to start a transaction, you have to do it from the transaction sheet. Contacts would be just anybody you've ever entered in here, whether it's a buyer, seller, another agent, etc. That would have all your contacts in it of anybody you've ever added, whether it's during a deal or beforehand or whatnot. If you wanted to, before you started the deal, add your contacts in here for your new client, your new buyer, your new seller, you could before you start your transaction, but probably most of the time you're going to add them when you create your transaction. The library contains all the forms that we have in the different folders: buyer form, agent sign-on folders, buyer forms, Connecticut forms, invoices, New Hampshire forms, office documents, rental forms, seller buyer additional forms, and training examples, which we're going to be loading some examples of offers into in different documents, just in case you have a question on what should be going in some of the documents. We'll have some training examples as well. Anything you get out of here, if you wanted to just, for instance, you're going to a listing presentation this afternoon, and instead of creating a transaction and going through that level, you just want to print out some of the sheets that you need to fly for hand signature. You can just come in the library and go to the folder, and you can do one of two things. We have uploaded the complete seller form packet, which you can just click on and download, and it's going to have all the seller forms you need to take with you. I mean, I know when I go to a listing presentation, I'm printing those out and bringing them with me, because if I can leave there with a signed listing agreement, I'm going to. So in those cases, I would print it and bring it with me. You can click on them individually if you just need a listing agreement. You can just download that one, or again, you can download the whole packet depending on what you're looking for. Same with any of the forms. You cannot do any templating in the library. You have to do it through a transaction. So if you're looking to draft a form or anything like that, you have to do it through a transaction. Calendar is a good running list of anything that you have going on. If you're using this for transaction management, which I highly recommend you do, then you want to be using this calendar to kind of remind you of important dates coming up, and making sure that you're on track with things that you need to do during your deals. You can also manage these tasks, and look at them through here if you need to. As well as upload directly. Even if you're not in a transaction and you just got this lead paint sign, you could upload it here. You don't have to go into the transaction and upload it. But the calendar is a good way to keep track of what.
Uploading it means send it to us.
Yeah, sorry. Yes. It won't, just uploading it is not going to submit it to Amy.
Right.
You still have to go to the transaction and hit submit. Actually, let's just see. If I uploaded a document here, let's just see if once I upload it, if it allows me to submit directly through here. No, it just closed out. It closed out that task within the transaction. So you'd still have to go into the transaction. I bet if we went into that transaction now, we would see that it would be there and we could submit it for review. That's pretty much all you're going to need to reuse. You're not going to use any of this other stuff over here. So really going to be working in your calendars, your library, your transactions. Anything's on the calendar is pretty much driven by checklists. So if you're not adding checklists into your transactions, you're not going to have anything showing up on your calendar. So once you create a transaction, it's a good idea to add your calendar tasks or add your checklists onto your transactions. That way it'll create the calendar for you, so you can start tracking important things during your process. All right, let's go to a transaction. Let's start a transaction. Let's first start a buyer transaction. So let's say I just started working with the buyer today. Or let's say I just started working with them today and I want to have them sign the agency disclosure at least. We had a good phone conversation. We don't know the address yet of where they're buying, but we do know their name. What's a good fake name? I don't. Yep. LeBron James. No,
too soon for that one.
Too soon for that one. How about David Price?
There you go.
All right. We know he's buying in Auburn, or we think he's buying in Auburn. Again, it doesn't have to be exact right now. 01501, but we do want to put a placeholder there, and we need some details to create our transaction. And I'm going to say he's going to buy in the $200,000 average price range. We want to also up here under, if it's a listing, we're going to create it under listing. If it's a buyer, we're going to create it under pending. I don't know why yet. I've talked to them about adding a status as buyer, but for now, the way that basically the pipeline is designed and organizing it, it's either listing or pending. And if you're using a buyer, you should do pending. We don't have a list date, obviously, because it's a buyer. So there's no list date. There's no expiration date, and we don't have an acceptance date or a closing date. Yeah, it's going to say additional fields required. The only one that's required under here in red is the source. And it's a good idea to track where your sources, your sources are coming from, because you can actually run reports on that and see, where your business is coming from over a year. That's the only other form that's required in here. If you wanted to add other stuff, you could, but certainly it's not required. We're going to then hit next. It's going to then bring you to contacts. If you have their email address, you can add them now. If you don't have their email address, you probably don't want to add them now. I'm going to say, you know what, I don't have their email address now. Or actually, let's say I do, because I need to send them the agency disclosure. So David Price is the person, and it's going to say you don't have that name in there yet, so we need to add an email address for David Price. So we add an email address. I don't have an address for him, but I'm going to hit create. If I had a second buyer, I would add a second buyer line, but I don't have one, so I'm just going to hit next. From this point, it's asking you if you know what the commission is. A lot of times you're not going to know the commission, but if you want to put a placeholder in there for the fact of, tracking your pending and your possible commissions coming in, which the pipeline will do, then you probably want to say, yeah, I'm working the buyer side, so I'm going to select the Lux Group. And I don't necessarily know the commission yet, so I'm just going to put it in there as 2.25%. Because obviously sometimes we get 2%, sometimes we get 2.5%. If you just cut it in the middle as kind of a tracking piece, then you can always go back in and change it later. We're doing 2.25%, and you want to add yourself in as the agent. So in this case, I'm logged in my fake account, which is my Thomas Brady account. So I'm going to add myself in there. This would be you, where you would put yourself. So If you had a split with somebody, you could also add an award distribution. Right here it's saying I'm getting 100% of the commission. So I'm not splitting my commission with anybody. So I'm getting 2.25% of the price sold, and I'm getting 100% of that gross commission that comes in, meaning I'm not splitting it with a team member. I didn't get there's no referral to anybody else. But if you wanted to, you could add a referral in at this point. And all you'd have to do is add another agent. And you add the agent, and then you basically, from that point, you put in 75% for you, 25% for that other agent. And now you're not giving yourself credit for the whole commission because you're paying someone else a referral fee, for instance, or OpCity. So if it was OpCity, you'd add it in OpCity so that, you're not taking credit in your own pipeline for more money than you actually have coming in.
What about the broker's commission? Should we put that in there?
Where do you see that?
The listing side?
The listing side, you don't have to put the listing side in because you don't know the listing side at this point. Make sense?
Yeah, no, I was
Yeah,
saying.
because we're the buyer's
Yeah.
agent. So
No,
that's-
but he's thinking the broker, like what the broker
Think
gets.
about
Oh,
group.
Well, when it shows in your pending, it'll show you.
Okay.
So then I'll show you that as well. So I'm going to hit create now. So now I've created a transaction. If at any point I want to go back and edit the details of this, for instance, all of a sudden it goes under on deposit on a property, I could click on edit, and I could change the address to the physical address, whatever the address is going to be. Change the city. Now they're buying in Worcester. Now the price is $205, and now we have an acceptance date, whatever that may be. You can hit save. You can add the closing date in there as well. Until you add those things, and I'll show you how this works. So now at this point we have a transaction folder created, and we have a rough baseline of commissions. You can see now if I go to the commission tab, you'll see the sale price is right now set at $205. It's I'm the agent on it, and because of that, you can see the gross commission basis would be, what that basis would be, and basically what the net of the agent would be. So you'll be able to see those details. It automatically puts in whatever your package is. It's already splitting that out and showing it on your commission tab. And the reason it's a weird number is because we did 2.25%. If we did 2.5%, it would 51.25. Commission to the agent, 4,100. If there was a revenue share to somebody, that's for the introducing parties. So that's all tracked in the system now, which is one of the nice benefits of it. So the revenue shares will be there as well. One of the upgrades we're talking about, hopefully in the next few months, is being able to have Lux cards like we had the bonus cards with Exit. So that's the commission tab. So now we have our transaction. If we went back out of there, we could just go back into that transaction at any point. Right now we have no checklist, so we have to add a checklist to every folder that we start. If you click on the checklist, you can, at the top here, you can pick whichever checklist you want. Obviously, if it's a buyer one, you at least need the buyer form checklist. There's another one in here called buyer initial consult through closing. If you're using this to make sure, one of the things that my coach is leaning heavily on right now, which I'm working with Nadine a lot on, is processes. Like the only time you can ever build a scalable business is if you have processes in place. And these checklists have been built on basically processes that create a set of checklists to make sure that every client you have, you're treating in the same fashion. Whatever your service commitment is, you don't forget anything, or you don't get busy and say, well, I'm just not going to do it for this one because I'm busy. These checklists are important factors in helping you make sure you do those type of things. So maybe you have your more in-depth checklists, but these are a good start. So I'm going to add the buyer form checklist, and I don't have an acceptance date, so I'm just going to hit add. And then I want to add the buyer initial consult to close checklist. So now you can see these checklists. It's added a lot of different tasks. So the initial consult to close is saying, did I have my one-on-one home buyer consultation? Yeah, I had that, and that's why I'm creating this transaction. So now I check that one off, and that's done. That's off my calendar. You can see some of these have dates. Some of them don't have dates yet because we don't have an acceptance date. So they won't show up in they'll show up in your calendar, but they won't have they'll be way at the bottom as unscheduled at this point. So they won't get scheduled until you edit the details of it and put in the acceptance date. So add to CRM and buyer drip campaign. Yep, I did that. I set them up in the MLS website for alerts, and I set myself up for an alert so I know what's coming on the market in their price range. So I'm marking those 3 off. And now I go to the form checklist. These are the required office documents. These are going to be what you need to provide between the time you start working with a buyer and the time you close in order to have an auditable
And I'll just
file.
point out, only because I know I made the mistake, because I thought when you're loading the checklist, and especially where it says upload on the right, and it has that little emblem on the left, I thought you were literally adding the forms at that point whenever you loaded the checklist. And so then I thought, oh, you click upload to upload the form, but it's not. That's to send it to Amy, right?
No, upload is to add the form for yourself or to use a template. So, okay, so let's say now we're starting this buyer form. This is a new buyer. We're just starting to work with them. We don't know yet if it's a designated agency because maybe they will buy a listing from us that we have. So right now we're going to skip by that one. Buyer agency disclosure. We need to get that one signed. So if you had met with them in a home buyer consultation, you might have it hand signed. If that's the case, you would scan and upload it here,
Right.
and you would pull it from there. But if I didn't and they left the consultation, I need to get this signed, then you would use forms. So if I use forms, now I'm going to select from list. I'm going to go to the buyer form packet, and I'm going to pick my.
So even though it's there, it doesn't give you you still got to go and choose it, even though you just chose that you want the buyer's exclusive whatever form.
Correct. They're not going to guess which form you want to use. You know what I mean? So now we're picking the agency disclosure, hitting next, and it's preparing. Today would be nice. All right. Let's go back. Use forms. Because, for instance, we have Worcester, Auburn, Shrewsbury, Westford, so it wouldn't be wanting to guess which one you wanted. That's why you have to select it. All right, so we did add David Price in there as a contact, but we haven't made him the buyer yet. So now we're making him the buyer by adding him in, and we're going to delete buyer 2 because we don't have buyer 2. So now we hit next, and it's going to create the e-sign package document. And it's going to basically require you as the agent to sign it first. So if we scroll down, or you just hit get started, it'll take you through the process. But we're going to click to sign. I'm going to sign it as an agent. You can do it. You can type it in or use whatever you want. The next box would be my name, license number, a broker. And as soon as you've done all requirements on the document, it'll say you've completed all required fields. Click next to continue. It's going to make sure you are agreeing to the terms of HelloSign is who they use for their e-signature. So we're agreeing to that and going to hit close. Now basically it's sent it out to David Price for e-signature, and
I see.
that's automatically gone now for e-signature.
And it'll know where.
So now I got
I
got an email saying from Lux Group saying please sign documents. It's saying in the email review and sign. I just click on it. So you can see it'll say waiting on signature. It's asking me to get started. I'm going to sign. I'm going to hit next. It's going to ask for my name. Says all fields are done. Hit continue. I agree. Now it's been signed. So now if I probably refresh my screen, it'll probably take a second, but in a second it'll come up as signed, and then you're done. So basically, let me see if I can get this to cross over now. Oh, maybe I have to go back into it. Uploaded and signed. So that one's been signed by that client.
Can we look at it now? Or
Yeah, you can look at it. You can either look at it in the preview over here on the right-hand side,
Okay, so
or you can
there's your
download.
signature. All right.
Yeah.
So when
So-
you added him in the buyer, it had his email address and all that stuff.
Yes.
And so after you did your thing, it automatically sent it
Automatically sent it to him.
to him. Okay.
It's kind of less steps, I would say.
Right. Yeah.
I think there's some confusion, or like, I don't even know if it's gone for signature. If it says awaiting signature, it's gone.
Right.
So some of these forms are pretty easy in the fact that you just, basically add your contact and hit, agree, I'm done with it. And now it's gone to the buyer for e-signature. Now that it's been signed, now I can hit submit for review. And now it'll say pending approval. Amy, every day she opens up her broker mint, she's got a action list of
Oh, I
things
see.
she
You
needs
choose
to
it from
approve.
action at the top. Just
What?
send it to her.
I'm sorry?
Where do you send it to her from?
It's over here. So if I just, let me add another document, or let me click on.
Oh, you already sent
Let's say we know it's not a dual agency at this point. A dual agency, we know. Let's say we're far enough along in the
Yeah,
process. So from the documents, so that when you're on the checklist,
Mhm.
there's some things that you can't do on the checklist. You have to click on the documents tab. It's a little, it's not perfect. I wish it was all kind of in one, but you
Right.
have documents and you have checklists. So sometimes, for instance, if I was on the buyer form checklist, I click on this notice of designated agency, I can't hit exempt. But if I'm on documents, I can do all the same things I can do in checklists. I can use, so most of the time I think you want to work through the documents tab because it has more of the capabilities. You can hit exempt, for instance, on this notification. And you want to add a note, say, not an in-house deal.
Right, or a house built before 1978 on a land paint or something.
House built after 78. Add the note, and then click on exempt. So now Amy, basically, if she's looking at it this morning, she's going to see 2 documents submitted on this David Price. One is an exemption request and one is the buyer agency. If she approves those, you'll now see them approved. So you shouldn't wait until the end of a deal anymore to hit submit. One of the things I really like about this is it's a checklist approved process. So with Dotloop, you couldn't tell, Amy couldn't tell what you were submitting, what you weren't,
Right.
what documents worth looking at, what documents not, but also you couldn't tell what she reviewed, what she approved, what she didn't approve.
Half the time you didn't even know what you sent.
Right.
Until you found out you were short.
Right. So this is very definitive.
Right.
If I've submitted a document on the buyer agency disclosure, there's no question. It's either there or it's not.
Right.
And there are cases where, in some cases, you have like a contract. I want to upload a bank contract, for instance, because we know the bank contracts often include everything. It includes the PNS and the lead paint, for instance. So sometimes you're going to have all documents in one, or you just, let's say you had a bunch of hand-filed documents. Instead of sending each one through as a scan, you could send the whole package through as a scan. And then from the unsorted documents section, you can do edit, split, and then you basically tell what pages you want to go with what. So if we knew that page 1 to 13 was the PNS, and it should pop up before we execute a PNS. And then we knew that page 14 to 14 was the lead paint. As you start typing, it should pop up, and it's
Now,
going
once we get those in there, because I understand how to do that part, I've
Yep.
done that part. Now you can ask for signatures, or you can add signatures and stuff on that stuff, or no?
You can. So if I go to unsorted documents here, I still, one of the things, if I go back to documents, so one of the ones that we did was the lead paint, right?
Right.
So we just did the lead paint. And if we wanted to, we could have someone e-sign at this point. So I can click on e-sign and then add their name. So
Right.
let's say David
That's
Price.
right.
So once I hit continue, it'll ask you to, because it doesn't know anything about the document, it's going to ask you to set up
That's
where
what
they
I'm
need to
asking
sign.
is where do you, like, how do you drop it on the document so it knows where to go?
I'll show you guys as soon as this comes up. So up here, you just drag and drop. So you click on signature, hold. Oop, yep, not that. Not that much of a hold. So actually, even if you just click on it, it's going to drop it at the top of the box, and then you can drag and drop it wherever you want it. So let's say I want to put it right here, and who needs to sign it? David Price. So now let's say it's a P&S, and at the bottom you have to initial each page. You can drag and drop everyone that you need to, and then you could add checks box. You could add a text box to it and say, I need to.
And then you can enlarge the text box.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And if you needed to add to a text book, instead of having David Price fill it out, you're filling it out.
Right.
So then you can add that in there, and then you can fill it out. So you can type in whatever. So then it's added to the document. So now you've just added text to the document too. So you can take, just like we did with .loop, you could take a P&S from an attorney and you could add it in here under unsorted, and then you could click on e-signature and walk through the e-signature process with it.
And then
And
once
then-
you add all your signatures and then you send it to David Price, then he's going to be, if there's 4 signatures, he's going to be asked to sign it.
Yes,
Sign
he's
in
going
4
to,
different
yes,
places.
click next, he's going to be, everything that you assign to him, he's going to be required to sign.
Right.
And then when it's signed, it'll still be in unsorted documents. And then you could say, all right, at this point, I want to assign it to one of my checklist items. Or you might be at that point just downloading it and sending it to the other side to sign before you can upload it back into one of your required documents. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So they're either living, a lot of times if you're still working with the document, it probably could be in unsorted. But there's going to be cases where sometimes, let's say you do an offer to purchase and the buyer e-signs it and then it goes to seller signature and you get it back via email, and you need to upload it in here as the fully executed P&S at that point, or fully executed offer. You can just delete whatever you had e-signed in here now. So let's say it was this was the offer to purchase, and we just want to delete it so that I can upload the fully signed one. That's all you'd have to do. So you might be in some cases having an offer e-signed, and it would say e-sign here for a while, and then once you get a fully executed copy, then you're replacing that by just going back to this line item, deleting that document, and adding the fully executed one at that point. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So just because the line item's here doesn't mean it has to be the final version of it. It only has to be the final version of it when you hit submit. So if you just drafted an offer and it's only got the buyer signatures on it, you would never want to hit submit, because
Right.
we don't need that. We don't need to see that. We only need to see what your finished document is before you close. And it's only like, if you want to be last minute with everything, you can submit all these at the last minute, but it just is easier, I think, to know that, once you're ready at closing, all these have basically not only uploaded, but approved, and then all you have to do is upload the HUD. And we all know the problems we had with .loop with the HUD too. It's like, there's so many, back and forth. You submit for approval, Amy approves everything, but then you add the HUD, and it just wasn't smooth. Now it's clearly, she can also log into a file and see, oh, the HUD's not there.
And if we wanted to add something, I think it's under action, right?
Yeah, you can add under
Your role.
checklist. So first, let's say you,
We're going to do a deposit check, for instance.
yeah,
A copy of the deposit check.
right, correct. So one of the things, these are just the base requirements. If there's anything else you want to add to the checklist or a document you want to add for a bank-owned property, anything you want, first you have to add it to the checklist. So let's say it's a bank-owned purchase and sales agreement. So I'm going to add it as a task. I'm going to assign it to myself, being Thomas Brady, is who I'm in right now. So, and it's requiring a document. If you don't hit require a document, it won't add it.
Right.
It won't allow you to add a document to it. So you have to make sure that this box is checked if you want to add a document to it. So we're going to hit save. Now you notice we've added a task here for this deal. And now if I go to documents, it also has a line item associated with it.
Right. So if you made a copy of the check, it would be in unsorted documents.
Yeah.
And then you would click on it and then bring it to the, or not bring
Yeah,
it
it depends on how you want to manage it. If you want to leave them in unsorted documents, they're always going to be there. They'll still be there in unsorted. But if you want to, you
just made it a part of your list as a thing. So you want to add that document to that thing you just put on your list, right?
you
Bank
can.
owned, whatever.
Yeah. Amy's not going to not close the deal out if you've added a required document. If it's not a requirement of ours, we're not going to
Right.
hold you up.
No, I meant just so you had it basically checked off in a sense.
Yeah, you could. Or you could just, if you had it unsorted, you just assign it to that bank-owned PNS. You know what I mean?
Right.
So now if I go back to the form checklist, it's got it uploaded.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to submit it? No, not necessarily.
Right.
But it's there, at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
All right, so then let's just look at the offer to purchase. I want to explain to you what's going to happen with the offer to purchase. So one of the issues with the system, which I don't get, I guess it's just programmers trying to do real estate things, and they've created a lot of great things about it. There were some things that were just not perfect. One of them was, if you noticed, when you're doing an offer to purchase, if you click on use forms and click on buyer and offer to purchase, hit select. If we had a buyer in here, let's say we want to draft the document, but we don't have, or we don't want it to send it to e-signature yet. We just want to draft it and print it out and hand sign it with the buyer. If you added the buyer's name in here at this point, it would be adding him. It would send it to him for e-signature automatically, which isn't what we want to do. So I'm going to click on use forms again. What is the offer to purchase? All right. So you'll see here, one of the ways you can do it right now without sending it to the buyer is to do it as a preparer. So you're making yourself be the preparer of the document. This will allow you to download it after you draft it. So what's going to happen, though, once they make the upgrade is whether or not you add buyers right now, it'll take you through this step into a next step, which is basically what they call a cover letter. You'll fill out all the offer details not in the offer, basically in a fill form. It'll say buyer name, seller name, offer price, deposit, expiration of offer, P&S,
Kind of stuff.
all the fillable spots in the offer form you put into a form, and then they carry over into the offer form. That way, if you ever want to go back and change it, all your details will be saved in the cover sheet.
Can I ask if something will be there? Like, so those boxes you're talking about, will they maybe be, how like in a text box that they want you to fill it in, could it say like 10 days from offers, 14 days from whatever?
It'll say
So
that
way it'll kind of
in the
jog
cover
your
letter.
memory too, you know what I mean?
There'll be some notes in the cover letter
Right.
where there weren't right before. So I'm going to hit next. Right now, the way it's set up, you can do it as preparer. I'm going to go to the next step.
Because as a new person, to fill out those boxes where like
Right.
we know,
Right. Right. Yeah. The cover letter. So right now you can see from adding either the buyer or just doing it as preparer, you're right in the form now.
Mhm.
what's going to happen once they make this upgrade is you'll be taking in, instead of being in the offer form right now, you'll be in a form filler.
Right.
And that is what will always pop up. But let's just pretend we're writing out an offer right now. I'm not gonna
So every place with an asterisk is where you're supposed to put something.
yeah, everything that's got an asterisk is required.
Right.
Anything else is optional. I'm just, for the sake of doing this quickly, I'm just gonna.
Are you hitting tab to move from things?
Yeah,
around?
yeah, you can move back and forth from tab.
October 3rd to accept, but
All right, I just want to get through it. Once you've completed all the required fields, it'll say you've completed it.
yeah.
Now, if you hit continue and hit agree, it's going to tell you, you're going to probably get an email saying, hey, you're the preparer. As the preparer, you need to sign something. There really is nothing you need to sign. But what it's done is it's created now a document that's pre-filled that you can download. So you could draft this offer, download it, and then have the buyer sign it. The unfortunate part right now is, so that's how you right now with the system can draft an offer and download it if you're not going to be just drafting it and sending it right for e-signature. The problem with this right now is if I hit unassign, or if you restart e-signature, it's just going to basically say who needs to re-sign it. So that's not going to really be too much helpful in editing
Now, what
it.
if you printed it out the way you have it filled out and uploaded it back in as a document
Mhm.
and then added signatures and this?
You could do that. Yep.
That would be like
You could do that.
a decent way.
But as far as editing it, let's say right now you have the buyer hand sign this, you send it off to the listing agent, and they come back and say 130, and they want to do 130. Right now, unfortunately, until this upgrade is in effect this afternoon, if you hit unassign, it's going to basically start that all over again.
Clear the whole
It
form.
clears the whole form. What will happen with this upgrade is when you click on this again, it'll say restart e-signature, and it'll pull up the cover letter, and you can change all the details you want in the cover letter and just hit next, review it, and then just hit send, or add the buyer at that point in time. So it'll be improved in the next day or two so that you can work with the offer form, and the offer and P&S is probably the two biggest two that where you have the most fillable areas of the form that you want to manipulate, and you have to sometimes manipulate it several times before you get to a final accepted offer. So that will be one of the upgrades.
So at what point does Amy have to review any of those documents? So if I make that offer and I want to send that out.
Only prior to getting paid. So there is no kind of, well, you need to send in this one. And there are dates that are associated with it when they are due. Those are more due dates that are due dates for you. Okay. Because for instance, we have our checklists, and it's basically saying, all right, we're just starting this deal. We just have the buyer agency. There's no dates for the offer to purchase or anything like that right now. But let's say we got that offer. We drafted the offer through the offer forms. We got it signed. We're moving forward at this point. Now you want to come into your deal and hit edit and say, okay, we got an acceptance on today, May 29th, and the closing date is July 13th. Now if I hit save, you're going to see all these dates start to populate. So it's basically saying, all right, I must have the fully executed offer to purchase now. So I could upload that and hit submit if I wanted to. Don't have to. But if you upload that document now, it'll take that out of your tasks being due. Okay. And then all acknowledgement inspections, make sure you have that signed right away. If there was a seller's statement of property conditions provided by the seller on that deal, then you should have that at that point. So these are good checklists to make sure you're doing all the things that you should be up front. Like a lot of times agents are chasing around the lead paint, at the back end of the deal or close to closing, and that's not the way it's supposed to go. And these are all meant to be self-reminders more than anything. We're not looking for documents. The only time we really care that whether or not the documents are in here or when you're closing out and looking to get paid. We want to make sure we have the offer to purchase, the
Everything
acknowledgement, the seller statement, any of these things that are in our document checklist. For instance, seller statement of property conditions, if we're on a buyer side deal and it's not checked in MLS as being provided, then you can click on exemption. But Amy will cross-check MLS and see if the listing that your buyer's buying says seller's disclosure yes, then for your protection and ours, we want to make sure that you did get a copy of that sign by the buyer that the seller provided. So in that case, we would want to see it submitted in.
And you want it on all of our listings, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the seller checklist is pretty much for you, as well as the initial consult to close, because there's a lot of good stuff in here. As you can see, so we set up a closing date of 7/13. So in this secondary checklist, which is not our form requirements, it has things like attend closing and get a closing gift, schedule, attend final walkthrough, create and send commission invoice to buyer and seller attorney.
Just a great list to create good businesses.
Yeah, exactly. Home warranty, if there was one, confirm loan commitment's been obtained. And these dates are all driven based on normal timeframes. Your offer, you may have to come in here and say, all right, well, this loan commitment isn't actually until another date. You could adjust the date on it if you want to, or delete it and add a new one. Pick up mail and radon. Are all just little things that happen during a deal you want to be reminded of, even if they don't take place. I don't care. You can say, oh, we didn't do radon. So you just click it and say, no. We're not reviewing the checklists. The only thing Amy's reviewing is the documents. So the checklists really are just for your running your deals effectively. Any questions on that stuff? If there's any problems with any of the forms, there's occasionally some little thing that'll pop up that's quirky. A lot of it has to do with how the templates were built. And because it is a little bit different system, we occasionally run into something where we want to basically go through and change how the template's set up. So if anybody notices anything that's just like, I don't know why this is doing that, or it doesn't seem to be working right, let us know, because it could be that a task isn't assigned right, or or like we had in some of the forms, somebody said, why are the deed reference lines in the offer required? Because I don't ever add deed references. I don't either, honestly. So we went back into the template and just made those not required. So sometimes most of them are just very easy fixes that Amy and I can just go in, because all the templates are in there that we built, and we can go in and modify those templates anytime we want to. So let us know if there are any things that you have concerns over. All right, so let's just, before we go out of David Price, the only other thing we really want you to do is, as you're working through the transaction, obviously, if they've got a deal under agreement now, it's got to be an address. So you should go back in and edit the address. And then obviously edit the price if, now it's 2085. Now it'll update the address. It'll also update your commission, basically. I put in $2,850,000. That would be a nice deal.
Yeah.
Now I mess it up the other way. How about we make an even number? All right, so now it's 210. Now it's adjusted the commission based on that as well. And if I go back to my main area, it'll also, if I click on pending, it'll show in my pending as a possible deal, that I'm working on. So your listings will be your listings. Your pendings will be, unfortunately, which is kind of weird. I'm asking them in the future to maybe put a listings, buyers, and then pending. Pending will include your pending and your buyers, which is a little bit different, but that's where your commission will live for both actual pending deals and buyers you're working on, that you add a commission. If you want to prevent deals that aren't under agreement yet from showing any commission in your pendings, then what I would recommend you do is you just go in here, for instance, in this one we were working in, and instead of putting in a price, put no price in there. If you watch, that number will probably change on our pending at that point. Yeah, now change the pending to 3,500. So if you it's your choice basically. If you want to show pending as really pending, like this is what I actually have coming in for commissions, then don't, and your buyers that you're setting up buyer transactions for, don't put a price in yet. Because that's where your buyers will live when you're creating your buyer transactions. Again, because when we started the transaction, we only have listing and pending right now. So pending is your pending and your buyers. They didn't really, I think when they originally set the system up as, again, being programmers, they didn't think of this being a from start to finish document and transaction management system. They looked at it as a listing to close or pending to closed, when it's really got all the capabilities of being a system from, hey, I just met you, to close. So we're kind of opening their eyes a little bit to some of this stuff, and I think it's a lot to do with the way other states work differently too. And a lot of states are literally straight P&S kind of states, and that's just, it's a different world. So all right, let's walk through quickly a listing side. So we're going to do a listing. We're going to, let's say, 469 South Fifth Street. We're listing this house, this property today. Yeah, Auburn.
Are you trying to tell us something, Tracy?
No. And then this price is going to be $250. We have a listing date of the 1st. Expiration. If you put in the expiration date, it's handy too, because it'll remind you of expiration dates coming up, which is great. Acceptance date. We all have a tendency to forget when we get busy, our expiration dates. So it's a good idea to add them in there. There are no required additional fields, but you can add additional fields in here if you want to. The one thing I did want to note is, please don't ever put, I'll send a notice out this also, but don't add anything in the escrow areas. We're going to use this system as a confirmation that we have the money in our banking account. So if I'll show you where you can see whether or not we do. One of the things that's still an ongoing problem is deals closing and then agents saying, oh, we had $6,000 in escrow and we actually don't, or there's a check missing. We went through hell Friday looking for a check that was just basically in a mailbox for 3 weeks. We thought it got lost. Always confirm whether or not, even if you personally dropped the check off in Worcester, doesn't matter. Like, even the scanner, the Bank of America scanner, every once in a while, you scan 5 checks through, it looks like it went through, you staple it to the statement, Amy puts it in the drawer, 3 weeks go by, that check didn't clear the bank account, and we have to send it back through the scanner. So, and it'll delay getting paid. So if we're going to use this as a confirmation system, that we are, and I'll show you where you can find that. But if you don't see the escrow in here, then that means that it's not received yet. All right, so we're creating our listing transaction. And we're going to say the total gross commission on this one, because we do want to set up the listing up front. The listing side is going to be the Lux Group, and we're getting 3%. And you can add yourself as the agent at this point in time. Hit save. We don't know who the other side is yet. Again, if you are having to pay a referral fee, let's say I want to add an agent because we're paying OpCity. I know we don't pay OpCity for listings, but let's just pretend we were. Now we're going to say, all right, I'm getting 65% of it. OpCity is getting 35% of it, and we don't know what the buying side is yet. So we're just going to hit create based on what we know so far. So now we've got our folder created. If I clicked on commissions, it's going to show me based on if it's sold today for $250,000, it's going to show me that I'm getting $48.75, and UpCity, they're getting $26.25, and that would be the breakdown of what I would get for a commission check. And if things change, for instance, like, oh, I messed that up, you can go back into that transaction, and here's that transaction, and say, oh no, I made a mistake. It's not UpCity. I'm not paying UpCity. You can delete them out, and then it'll show just you getting the commission. And okay. All right, so now we have a blank property. We have no checklist yet. So first thing we want to do is add a checklist. In this case, we're going to add, most of the time when you're setting this up in the listings, you probably want get the listing forms. So I would say you probably want to add both the seller form checklist. We don't have a closing date yet, so I'm just going to hit add. You'll see it adds a certain number of checklist items, but then I probably want to suggest you add the listing through under agreement as well. There's actually 3 checklists in here for sellers. The other one that's in here is the listing accepted offer through close. I'm going to add all 3 because I'm going to show you that there's a lot of good things in here that will help you. The seller form checklist is going to be, that's the office requirements. That's the only thing you have to worry about actually submitting to the office. The seller agency disclosure, listing agreement, lead paint, seller statement, offer to purchase, designate agency if it's an in-house deal, executed purchase and sales agreement, internal invoice, commission invoice, co-broke commission, and the HUD. The listing through under agreement, this adds a lot of the things that you should be thinking about or you should be doing as a standard on every deal. Schedule a photographer, yep. I got the listing signed, so I've scheduled that. I prepared and getting it ready to post on MLS. I've added the lead paint and seller's disclosures to the MLS paperclip. I've installed the yard sign and lockbox. I've posted and boosted my first open house. I've created and shared the Circle Pix tour products. Remove open house info from the MLS description. A lot of agents forget to do this. They have an open house Sunday, 5/29, and then 2 weeks go by, and you look at your description. It says still open house.
Yeah,
5/29.
Accept them until open house.
Right. Which what would that do to your seller? I mean, technically, you're not doing a very good job for your seller if somebody 2 weeks from now is the first time they're just getting in the market. They haven't seen that house yet. All of a sudden, it pops up and it says all offers by 5/29, and obviously you didn't get any offers. So, that's interesting. Right. Versus it being out of there and them saying, "Oh, this one could be hot. I got to get after this one."
Right.
So you want to make sure you're doing these things. Status report and reduction discussion with the seller on May 15th. You know what I mean? So all these things are in here to help you kind of keep track of all the things you want to keep up with during your transaction. The accepted through close has things like received, insured deposit check received by the office. Send executed offer to the seller. Schedule home inspection with seller. Remind seller to obtain smoke cert. Negotiate inspections and clear contingencies. Confirm loan commitments. Attend final walkthrough. Send seller gift. Check file for completion and approval of all documents. Update Zillow with sold. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that you should do on a consistent basis from every deal, and all these items are in the checklist. And if there's anything that you think ever should be added to the checklist, it's very easy for me to add it. And they're all driven by either creation date, under agreement date, closing date, expiration date. They're all
We're supposed to upgrade Zillow?
It won't upgrade automatically typically.
Not once have I ever done it. I've always just gone to MLS.
So if you probably went on your Zillow profile, it would say 0 sold. you have to physically claim you're sold on
Gotcha.
Zillow. Zillow wants to keep you coming back.
Right.
It's the same thing I was talking with one of the agents up in Westford about claiming listings, and I thought you could still claim your listings. Zillow shut that off, so you can't claim your own listing anymore. You still show up as listing agent, and if you create a profile, your picture and your stuff will be there, but you used to be able to claim your own listing so that nobody else would show up. You can't do that anymore. Even paid accounts, you can't do that. Because Zillow wants to keep that advertising money coming in.
We'll provide you with the inventory. Keep charging us to sell it.
Right. Exactly. All right. So documents works the same kind of way. Again, you can upload them. You can use the templated forms for e-signature. All the same basic documents that you could before. Same thing with the listing agreement. And the listing agreement will also have a cover sheet as well, the cover sheet we talked about, so that you can not only draft it, but go back in and change it. But for now, if you just want, like one of the agents wanted to be able to draft the listing agreement all typed out, ready to go, so they could go there with it. In that case, if you're not having the seller e-sign because you're preparing for a listing appointment, you would make yourself as the preparer. So let's just make myself as the preparer. It's now opening up the document. And it's going to say, okay, Mary Smith is the seller. There's nothing else I have to fill in. Oh, well, I need to make a change to this document because there is. I want to be able to add the price. So I'll go over this form with Amy today. But it'll be set up so you can change the commission, hit continue, and then once you're done, it'll be downloadable. That way it'll be here. You can click on it and download it and take it to have hand sign. And it'll be nice, clean, and you won't have to worry about filling that out in front of your seller. So that's that form. If you click on commissions on any of your listings, if you don't see up here an escrow, then I would be concerned if that you should be checking with the office to make sure we have escrow. What Amy will be doing is if she receives an escrow, she's going to come in here and say escrow number 1 offer received. She's going to say I've confirmed and deposited and it's in our account $1,000, and she's going to hit save. Why is that not showing? Escrow 2, money received from. So now you can see $1,000 EMD. So I just didn't fill out the right box. So she's going to fill that out. And then if she gets, so if you click on the commissions on any of your things, if you're not seeing an EMD here, be concerned, check with Amy, make sure we did get the deposit. A lot of times what happens, especially on the offer side, is the agent, it happens a lot more so probably on the offer side than the P&S side, but the agent tells their buyer to, you hold on the check because until we accept it, they're not going to do anything with the check anyway, so I don't want to hold your check. A lot of buyer's agents will say this. I don't want to hold your check, you hold on to it, which personally I think the buyer agent should be holding on to that check. But there's a lot of agents that are like, oh, we looked at this house today and you call me back later, you want to make an offer, great. We do it via e-signature and send me a photocopy of the check, but I don't need the actual check in hand until they accept. Seller accepts. Buyer agent says, all right, just mail the check into the listing office. That buyer either A, forgets to, or purposely doesn't send it in because they want to see how the inspection goes. They don't want their money held up. So as an agent, you should be concerned with whether, us getting that deposit check in-house right away, because otherwise the buyers just got an opportunity to skip anytime they want. I wouldn't be marking it contingent until you have an offer. And if you make it clear to the other side, we're not going to, we need the deposit in hand before we mark the contingent, then they're probably going to find a way to deliver it to the office. As soon as Amy deposits, she'll add it in here. And now let's say we're going through the deal and she gets another deposit for the P&S. So now she's going to go in and going to say escrow number 2 is for $4,000. And she's going to update this to 5,000 total. And now it's going to show 5,000 total EMD. So that's where agents should be checking on their listings to make sure we have the EMD. If you're getting a week away from closing and we don't have the EMD yet, then or it's not all shown here, then you should be reaching out to Amy at Lux Group Homes MA at gmail.com, or just calling the office number. All right, so that's the documents. Again, it's the same kind of thing. You can work through documents. You can work through unsorted to upload. You can then assign it to whatever you want in here. If you're working with the documents, you can use the forms. You can click exempt. You can upload. It's the same concept. And you just basically do what you want. The other way to upload documents is if you wanted to add documents into your unsorted document folder via email. If you click on add via email, this email address right here is, if you copy that, and let's say I just got a P&S today on that deal. Go to oh Christ, upgrading your terms. All right, let's just say I had an email from the attorney with the P&S. Whatever is attached to this email is going to upload. So let's say they just sent me let's say that's the P&S, and I'm just going to, all I would have to do is forward to this email address, and anything that's attached to that will be uploaded into the system. So if I go back to documents, unsorted, I might have to hit, might take a second to show up. Oh, there it is. So now I forwarded an email to that email address and it's showing up in unsorted. So you don't have to worry about downloading to your computer, clogging up your computer, and then forwarding stuff that you're receiving from the attorneys. It'll be there. The other nice part about it is if you go to the activity log, it'll actually show you a copy of the email that was with that went along with that. So even if like you had an email, you just wanted to send forward to that for record purposes. Let's say it's an email negotiation, or it's just something like, I don't know, this could come back to haunt me at some point. If you just forward that email to that email address that you'll find under the deal, so you just, no matter what transaction you're in, you've got an email address specifically for that transaction. You just copy it, and then anything you send to there will show up in either documents if there was a document attached, or it'll show up in activity. So now you can see emails received. It'll have a copy of the emails that you forwarded into that system. So it's good for tracking purposes and keeping things that you want to keep during the transaction. So now if I go back to pipeline, you'll see listeds. That's where that deal is living under right now. If I change it to pending, it should move it to pending. Switch to pending. Lead sources, sphere of influence. Now if I go back to my pipeline, it's going to show up under pending. So now it's moved to pending. So that's how they're going to move from that. And then as you close deals, it'll show you your closed deals as well. So it's kind of a good way to kind of quickly look at, hey, what do I potentially have coming in for commissions, and what's going on with it. So again, the hardest part of the system to kind of get over the hurdles with have been using the forms, which between massaging the templates and getting them to make this upgrade with the cover sheets, I think will mostly be worked through any of the issues we had. It is a little different than .loop, but I think it's got a lot more bells and whistles to it, which, once they get us through a couple of these, I mean, the biggest problem we really had was being in transactions and drafting offers or whatever, and then it not saving any of the details that are in it. Not that it takes forever to take your original offer and retype a new offer, but time is time in this business. So anything they can do to help us save that time will help us even more. So the big difference, again, will be right now, if you go to offer to purchase and you click on use forms, it's asking you to fill in your buyer's name. If you're just trying to prepare it, you're not ready to send it for e-signature, you got to do it as preparer. Once they make this upgrade, what will basically happen is you'll be able to click on use forms, select your offer to purchase, and then, if you did have the buyer's name, let's say you did have the buyer's name, it's David Price. And he's the only buyer right now. I don't have to add a preparer because I've got a buyer that I actually do want to have e-sign this when I'm done with it. You hit next. Instead of it going right into the offer form and right where it's going right now, it'll take you into a cover sheet. And the cover sheet will walk you in order of how you would normally fill out the offer form. It'll walk you through down, boom, 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 all the way through. You'll fill it all out. And when you hit next, it'll populate everything all into this offer form at once. And then once you're done and save it, at any point in time, you'll be able to click on unassign or edit, and you'll be able to edit the cover sheet, which will dump into the offer form. I guess the reason for it is the way their e-signature platform works is once you start filling out the form itself, you can't go back and manipulate it, but they were able to create a cover sheet so that you can fill out the cover sheet. It dumps in the offer form. If you ever unassign it or delete it, you can just go back in that cover sheet, change 1 or 10 items, and then hit save, and it'll repopulate everything into that offer form again. So hopefully that'll be in the next day or so, and we'll have a pretty smooth working system. And then if anybody needs one-on-one support, we're definitely here to help. Any questions? All right. I guess we'll call it a day.